And in chapter 7, Bhagavan has sort of given us a brief idea about who he is and how this whole samsara, this whole prakriti, whatever we call Srishti, sort of manifests. And Bhagavan sort of explains that there is this Maya Sakati with Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti. This Apara Prakriti is what? Manabuddhyankara and the five Tanmatras. And this is the Jada Prakriti, which animates the material aspect of existence, which manifests as something visible, out of which this whole visible world manifests, these 8 causal principles. And then we have what he calls the Para Prakriti, the Mula Prakriti, which is very subtle, which is very sukshma. Okay, now one explains the Jada Varga, the material, multiple layers of reality. The other one sort of talks about the consciousness, which provides life to this whole world. And he went on explaining how to reach him and understand him. Because he mentions that between God and us, to be very blunt and simple in one sentence, everything is consciousness in Vedanta. There's nothing called matter. It's all consciousness. Consciousness manifests, appears as material, is emotional, is mental, is intellectual. Essentially, what is it? It's all consciousness. Now, this is what the science doesn't seem to take note of until now. Now, the quantum mechanics and the other experts, they are sort of opening up to the idea of consciousness. Though largely the scientists, the materialists, will not pay any attention to what Vedanta has been saying for thousands of years, that everything is actually consciousness. Then we sort of divide them into different spheres. We say this is Jada, this is Chetana. But Vedanta says the consciousness is everywhere. It is not better reflected in Jada. It is better reflected in animals, plants, and human beings. Because of the quality of reflector, it dazzles a little more. The same sun falls on earth, then falls on a metallic surface, then falls on water. On water, it dazzles. Similarly, same consciousness pervades everything, dazzles. Similarly, same consciousness pervades everything, and everything is kind of manifest out of this consciousness. But wherever we see that spurana, that illumination, that vibration, we call it living. If we don't see it, we don't call it living, we call it non-living. Bhagavan, when he mentions all that in chapter 7, and he says how to reach him, he's saying this Sakti is Daivi. And those who focus their attention on me are able to overcome this delusional barrier, This barrier is not real. This Ajnanata is not real. Understand this. If Ajnanata becomes real, there is no freedom. We cannot get moksha. We'll be stuck here. If our papa is real, there is no moksha. Papa punya is all mental thing. There are certain actions. And these actions are not you. Whatever actions you have done, that is not you. You have done some actions. You will suffer some consequence. You will suffer some consequence where at a mental, emotional plane. Is your Atma affected? No. Vedanta says no. That is Sakshi. That is pure. So the more and more, that doesn't mean we're going to do more and more Papa, because that will cloud our consciousness. So essentially, what is being hinted is that you focus on me, then you'll be able to look through this magic wall which separates you from me. That is what Bhagavan says. And he mentions about 4 types of bhaktas: Artha, Jigyansu, Artharthi, and Jnani. The Jnani is dearest to him because he doesn't see himself as different from the Lord, and therefore the Lord returns the favor, and he doesn't see the bhakta as separate from him. There is ekatva, that tattvamasi aham brahmasmi. Same thing is kind of mentioned there. Then Bhagavan then that fellow, there is no end, there is no measure in his experience, because God protects. The Bhagavan says, Name Bhakta Pranashyati, my devotees are not to lose. Why? Loss is a very mental thing. There is no loss for my devotees. They have taken surrender in me, and I'm there to protect them. Who is going to disturb them? I'm the Lord of the whole universe. Then he sort of mentions a lot of techniques of doing meditation and Bhagavan. And only the Punyatma is able to see Vasudevam Idam Sarvam. Everywhere he sees Lord Krishna. Only a few cannot, but he sees Lord Krishna's grace everywhere, and he's full of love and affection. Now, when he describes all this, towards the end of it, Arjuna has a very important question to ask. First, he has some doubts why, if you are so powerful, people don't worship you. Then he mentions that lot of births people take when there is a lot of punya and the antakarna is purified, then people's mind sort of opens up to me. That's one thing. And then he also mentions other ways. He mentions yesam tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam. वो आदमी जिनके पाप क्षीण हो चुके हैं, खत्म हो चुके हैं, दुबला हो चुके हैं, और उनका जो आत्म सत्ता शुद्ध सत्व अस्थि भाति रूप प्रकाशित होने लगता है। बादल आते हैं, बादल निकल जाते हैं, तो सूरज फिर दिखाई देता है। ते द्वंद्व मोह निर्मुक्ता, the sukha dukkha, these are the dualities which sort of creates ichha and dvesha in all of us, raga and dvesha. They are free from that duality and the problems caused by this dual experience of happiness and pain. Bhajante mam dridhavrata, without any doubt. Then these people don't have any death, they don't have any old age, no, they have. And therefore, to overcome this and to get liberation from the cycle of birth and death, they take surrender in. They surrender to me, they take refuge in me. And then what happens, he mentions beautifully in sloka number 29 of the chapter 7, Te Brahma Tad Viduhu, Te Yad Brahma Tad Viduhu. That means, what is Brahma? They know that. What is that Brahma? Nirupadika, Suddha Buddha Mukta, Sachidananda Surupa, Krishna Madhyatam Karma Chaklam. And they also know karma. He has already raised this, right? And he mentions in the final sloka, you see, he's dropping certain concepts and raising your expectations that you will ask those questions to him, because he's dropping certain certain technical terms, certain complex concepts. Then he says, Sadi Bhutadi Daiva Mam, Adhibhuta and Adhidaiva Saha. Adhibhutena Saha, Adhidaivena Saha. Yo Mam Sadi Jagyam Ye Viduhu. And the ones who know me, look at the first line. Who is Adhijagya? They know me along with the understanding of the technical aspect about me called Adhijagya. Then they know me which aspect? The Adhibhuta aspect. And they know the Adhidaiva aspect. So there are three new technical terms which has come in the last sloka. What is the first one? Adhibhuta, then Adhidaiva, and then Adhijagya. And then this is Prayana Kalepi Chamam Te Vidur Yukta Chetasaha, and they are able to remember me even at the time of death. And before that, what is that? Ye Yad Te Yad Brahma Tad Viduhu. Look at that particular sentence. Whatever is Brahma, they know that. Krishnam Adhyatmam, and also they know the Adhyatma. Karma Chakhilam. So how many technical terms have come in the last half of the verse 29? Brahma, Adhyatmya, and a karma. There are three technical terms here. What is that Brahman? What is Adhyatmya? And what is that karma? They know all this, right? So there are three things here, and the next line, Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva, and Adhijagya. There are three more concepts, right? And final line is Prayana Kalapi Cha Mamte Vidur Yukta Chetasaha, because they are fully, sort of integrated with that absolute consciousness, the pure consciousness called Brahman. They are not disconnected from me, and therefore they are able to remember me. That means they have no fear of death. They know that they are not different from Brahman, and they know this, right? Prayanakalepi cha mante viduhu yukta chetasaha. Now, once he mentioning all that, Arjuna will have questions relating to these seven concepts, seven questions, which I've already mentioned. Okay, what is Brahman? What is Adhyatmya? What is Karma? What is Adhibhuta? What is Adhidaiva? And what is Adhijatya? And seventh one is, how do people remember you during death? These are the questions he's going to ask. These are the questions which arose in our minds when we were discussing those verses. And Bhagavan is going to answer them one by one. Why these questions are suddenly being raised? This is about what we are discussing the Ishvara Tattva, the Tat Padartha. We have discussed about Ahang Padartha, that is Tvam Padartha, or this is about the Jivatma, all the difficulties associated with how our mind works, what is our true Papa and Punya, what is Karma Yoga, what is Bhakti Yoga, what is Jnana Yoga, what is Karma Sannyasa, Jnana Vijnana. We studied all that. Towards this whole world in relation to us, and also with certain hints as to how we need to meditate on God. Like, for example, if you want to go to Bombay, if you have never been there, you're going for the first time. So people tell you certain stories about what the city looks like, how you have to be very careful with the metro rail because it stops there for a second, and how to deal with the new metro railways or the monorail networks which have started in certain parts of northern and eastern part of Bombay. So all these things you sort of take into account when you go to Bombay, where to stay, how to find a place. All these questions are there, isn't it? Similarly, Bhagavan is telling us about the Ishvara Padartha and what it is, how to meditate. If we do not know different aspects of that realm of reality, we would not know how to know. We would not know. If we don't know what physics is all about, we open the book, you don't know. Similarly, when we started reading Bhagavad Gita, in the beginning there was a long introduction, how the first 6 chapters are about the Jiva, the Tvam Padartha. Next 6 chapters are about the Tat Padartha, about Ishvara. And then the end 6 chapters about Tattvamasi. What is the Aikya between Tat and Tvam, Ishvara and Jiva? What is the relationship? These kinds of introduction was given. Similarly, Bhagavan now is talking about himself. He's talking about that Tat Padartha, the Brahman, right? And therefore, these questions are being asked because these theoretical concepts, once clarified, will make it easy for us to understand the Vedantic theory about divinity and how to connect with divinity. What is that Ishvara? Because we have a lot of questions. You people ask questions, I have asked questions. What is that Ishvara? Because we have a lot of questions. You people ask questions, I have asked questions. Should we worship Lord Krishna, or should we worship Ram, or Lord Shiva, or Jesus, or Allah? These questions do come. What this Bhagavad Gita says, if you are keeping in your mind Brahman as a concept, that is very clear, and then you are worshipping whatever gods and goddesses who are dear to you, but as part of me, as aspects of me, you have Ganga Snana. If you think I am having a bath in Benares, removing that word Ganga, then whether you are having it in a hotel room or in the Ganges, there is a big difference. If you take a bath in your hotel room, you don't get the punya. You have to go to that Ganga, right? So if you are having even a bath in your hotel room, thinking that end of the day this is Ganga water, you might get the same psychological benefit. So what he says is, you worship all gods and goddesses, but so far you see all these divinities are as expressions of me. Your connectivity is fine, no network problems. But if you disconnect these deities from their source, the absolute nature, that is me. These are names and forms. Do worship, not a problem. You cannot enter me because that requires a lot of punya, a lot of clarity. It's very difficult. Nirguna Nirakara Upasana is not easy. So you do Saguna Sakara Upasana, not a problem. But once you know this whole tattva about Brahman, then you still get fuller benefit from reading Ganesha Atharva Sirsha or Divya Atharva Sirsha. Not a problem, because the Vedanta Vakyas are very much there. Now, let's go now to Ashtamadhyaya. We have got a very long discussion on the context in which this is being said. So the sloka, before the sloka, because Shankaracharya doesn't say much, it's the Madhusudan who gives a long introduction, as well as there is a bit of explanation of the first two verses. Shankaracharya doesn't take much space to explain the first two verses, which we'll do today. Purva adhyayante te brahma tadviduhu krishnamaadhyatmam karma chakilam ityadina सार्ध श्लोकेन सप्त पदार्था ज्ञेयत्वेन भगवता सुत्रिताः तेषां वृत्तिस्थानीय ayam ashtomadhyaya arabhyate. So Bhagavan, as I mentioned, towards the end of it, the kind of, it's 1.5 verses, right? The last verse as well as the previous thing, last line. So with that mark, they sort of, he has kind of knitted together. It's like putting 7 flowers and making a garland. Bhagavan has stitched together 7 questions, 7 objects of knowledge. Jnana. Jnana is what? What you want to know, what can be known about or discuss about. So that Vrittisthaniya Ayam Ashtamadhyaya, this 8th chapter is going to deal with those 7 subject matters. What are they? Again, let's count. What is Brahman? That's number 1. Number 2, what is Adhyatma? Number 3, what is Karma? Number 4, what is Adhibhuta? Number 5, what is Adhidaiva? Number 6, what is Adhijagya? And number 7, how do people remember you in the last moment of their physical existence when they are about to drop their body? These 7 questions. Now we are clear. This chapter is going to deal with these 7 questions. And therefore he is saying, Arabhyate tatra sutritani sapta vastuni vishesata bhuvussamanaha slokabhyam. So these 2 slokas kind of deal with the desire to know and God's willingness to talk about them in the first 2 verses. So, Sri Arjuna Uvacha King Tad Brahma Kimadhyatmam Kim Karma Purushottama Abhibhutam Cha Kim Prokta Madhidaivam Kimuchyate. So Arjuna has this first sloka. Let me do both because they kind of link to each other, and then we'll do them together. Adhijagyaha katham kotra dehesmina madhusudana prayana kale cha katham jnyosi niyatatmavihi. So, the first verse. And what is it? King Tad Brahma, because you mentioned towards the end of that, and that was very interesting. In this verse number 29, the last half of the verse, you said, Te Brahma Tadviduhu. Te Yat Brahma Tadviduhu. Whatever is Brahma, they know. Then you said Krishna Madhyat, they know. Then you said Krishna Madhyatmam. Comprehensively, whatever is Adhyatmya, they also know about it. Who? Those who surrender to me and do my bhajana. In what way is it that Giridhar Gopal? No, Vasudevam Sarvamiti. So those who meditate on me, the absolute Brahman, they have the benefit of knowing what is Brahman, and they know what is Adhyatmya, and they also know what is Karma. Right? Therefore, he is saying, King Tad Brahma, Te Tad Brahma Viduhu, Te Brahma Tad Viduhu. That's what you said. He's asking the first question immediately. King Tad Brahma. And then he said, what? Krishna Madhyatmam. So Arjuna is asking, Kim Adhyatmam? Krishna, that comprehensive Adhyatma. Kaun sa matlab hai? What is the meaning of that? And then he says, Karma cha akhilam. And also they know about all the karmas, all the observation of different rituals. What is karma here? Karma remains all the ritual sacrifices, all the karma anushtanas, srota yajnas, what is smarta and sota, whatever. Purushottama, he's addressing him as Purushottama. Very intelligent guy, no? So it's like you go to a person and you want a bit of financial help. What do you tell him? You know, you're such a rich man, but a lot of rich men are there on earth. But then you're the only person I know who is very rich, but at the same time full of compassion. So you are marketing your skills. You are trying to raise some donations, isn't it? So you tell him you're the compassionate guy. There are a lot of rich people. Similarly, Arjuna is saying Purushottama, because he's saying if you don't know, no one else will know. You being Purushottama, you are the supreme consciousness and Sarvagya, and therefore you are supposed to know. And please tell me, Adhibhutam Chakim Proktam, because he mentioned Sadhibhuta and Adhidaiva. He had mentioned that. So Abhibhutam Chakim Proktam. अच्छा कौन सा अधिभूत की बात कर रहे हैं? What adhibhuta are you talking about in the first line of the last sloka? That's what he's asking. And then Adhidaivam kim uchyate, and what is referred to as Adhidaiva? That's usually Sadhi Bhuta Daivam that he mentioned. Mam Sadhi Jagyam Chame Viduhu. And then you also said that also know me along with my Adhijagya aspect. So immediately in the next verse he's saying Adhijagya Katham Kotra. Adhijagya, who is he? Who is that Adhijagya? Katham Ko Atra. And that Adhijagya is manifesting in this body. Ko Atra, who is that? And Katham, how does he exist here? How does he manifest? How does he enter? How does he enter the scene? How do we make sense of him? Madhusudana. Madhusudana is a powerful guy, right? He destroyed the demon, Madhu and Madhu Kaitava, isn't it? It comes out in the Chandi, in the Devi Bhagavat, in the Durga Saptasati, and therefore he can remove all ajnana because he has removed this demon, so he destroys. So Bhagavan can destroy our ignorance. So that's why he's referring to him as Madhusudana. Prayana Kalecha Katham Yeoasi. And how do we know you, that divinity? How is it possible for a person to remember that? Because you see, a lot of Upanishads say a person takes a rebirth depending on his state of mind in the last moments. That is why in ancient India the practice was कोई आदमी का जाने का समय होता है तो गीता पढ़ाई करते थे, उसको गीता सुनाओ ताकि मन उसका सात्विक बन जाए. ऐसा ना हो कि ही स्टक विद खाना क्या बन रहा है, बिजली खराब खत्म मत करो. This story was told to us by our acharya here, that this fellow was a great scholar and he lived a long life, but about a few minutes to go, he was a very rich man and he's a billionaire. He's going to go and the AC is on, and his children, his grandchildren, his daughter-in-law, they're sitting next to him because he may die any moment. And he starts shouting at his daughter-in-law, तुम समझती नहीं हो, तुम बेटी समझ के बोल रहा हूँ, बुरा न मानना, ये बिजली एसी वेसी क्यों इतना चला रहे हो, बिजली खराब करते रहते हो. He starts saying this. What is he expressing? Miserliness. What is he practicing? Verbal violence. He's saying because you are my daughter, but actually what is he doing? He was hurting her. What she is trying to do? Putting on the AC. Why? The father-in-law or father will have a peaceful abandonment of the body. He should not feel hot or irritated. He shouldn't sweat. That's what she's trying to do. Who is doing dharma here? The daughter-in-law. And who is forgetting dharma here? The rich billionaire father-in-law. Isn't it? Now, where does he go? Our Shastra says, depending on the last moment of your mind, what kind of things you are thinking, your body accordingly undergoes a transformation. Is it true or false? I don't know. I'm just saying this is what is written in many spiritual texts. Honestly, we don't know where you are going to go. It's up to you to decide whether you want to believe in it or not. But there is a good lesson here that the purer the consciousness becomes, the easier the transition, the less the amount of fear, the less the amount of tension and stress and everything in the body. So he's saying, Prayana Kalecha Yeo Asi Niyatatma Vihi. How do people who are supposed to die anyways, they are tied up with this possibility, unavoidable possibility of having to die? How do they know you? How are you available in knowledge? These are the 7 questions. Okay? And we will do the tika, and we'll understand these questions very well, and we'll start with the answers tomorrow. Today is kind of, we are not trying to speed up, but we're setting the context in which this chapter is, remember now, each chapter will become a little complex. Okay, chapter 3 and 7 and 8 will become a little difficult, 9 will become a little easier. Okay, so then 10th is few concepts, and 13th will become again a little theoretical, then 14, 15, 16 very easy, and it's not much. 15 is again very philosophical. So there'll be kind of chapters like this. Okay, once in a while the level of complexity will go up a little. So chapter 8, there is a lot of theoretical concepts. The last moment of life. Okay, this is the verse number, last verse of chapter 7. You look at it. Prayana kale pichamam ti vidur yukta chetasaha. The last verse he mentions in 7th chapter, Prayana kale picha mam te viduhu yukta chetasaha. They know me, they don't forget me in the last moment. So the question is sort of, if you relate it in the 8th chapter, in the 2nd verse, last line, what does he say? Prayana kale cha katham gyevasi. How are you available in knowledge? How do you know you? How do we know you when we are going to? And anybody who is living this body, niyatatma vihi. How is it possible that a person is able to remember the divinity about the time of his death? Prayana is death, isn't it? So let's look at the elaboration on these theoretical concepts which we have started dealing with, and this will be kind of discussed in a little greater detail by Madhusudana, and we are going to deal with it. So he's saying, Tat Gyatvena Uktam Brahma King, Sopadhikam Nirupadhikam Va. Then again, there are two theoretical concepts, and I have to clarify this to you. Now, this Brahman is saying whether it is Sopadhika or Nirupadhika. What is Upadhi? First, you have to understand that. Upadhi is essentially a kind of a layer or a superimposition. Sopadhika means, just imagine, when you say Atma, that Atma is what? Pure Satchitananda Swarupa, nameless, formless. Then how you make sense of it? When you say Ishvara, that has become Sopadhika. Maya Upadhi Sahita. Maya Upadhi Rahita is Param Brahman, no name and form. With Upadhi, it becomes Ishvara. That's what we had studied in Tattva Bodha, Atma Bodha. So whenever, just imagine that, just the example I'll give it like this. There is a simple glass between you and me. Okay? So can you see that piece of glass? It's completely transparent, isn't it? That is why in buildings, when you have this completely transparent glass, they give it a certain tint, isn't it? A bluish tint or greenish tint. Why? Then it looks like a separator, because you know there is something. It's not, if it's completely transparent, it has happened many times that people try to walk through it and they hit up on that glass barrier. It happens. Now, what is that upadhi we are applying? We are applying a blue tint. So whenever there is a white piece of glass is completely transparent, you can't recognize it. However, if you apply a bit of color in it, then you can recognize that yes, there is this particular thing. Okay, so this is how it is. If there is completely transparent water, just imagine extremely clean water, and the surface of that swimming pool is painted with something. It's quite possible that if it's extremely clear water, you may not in fact see water. You might think, okay, it's very clean. But if you mix a little blue or red color in the water, then you know, okay, it's red, this liquid over there. That's how you would know. So if that Suddha Brahman, it's completely transparent, and there is a bit of taint on it, a bit of color code or anything, then it appears as blue or red. That appearance of that piece of glass is a blue glass or green piece of glass. The glass has no color. You have just put a thin layer or tint, whatever you call it. Then it looks blue or green. Similarly, The greenness or blueness is imposed on that piece of glass. The glass has no color of its own. Similarly, the Brahman has no name and form. We apply on it. Why? For our own use, otherwise you can't recognize that glass. Now, if you want to meditate on Brahman, you want to make sense of this whole universe and how it manifests, you attribute certain upadhi to the Brahman, which is without name and form, it's completely transparent. This is for your benefit. Like, for example, there is a thin thread, So people may, like, for example, if there is a divider, another example on highways, if there's a divider, some work is going on. So during night, what do they do? You cannot see it. So there'll be accidents. So what do? They'll put some fluorescent color, yellow or something, and they will put those markers which reflect light very well, so that even limited amount of light falls on it, it dazzles, because they allow that fluorescent tint on it, isn't it? Why do they do it? And if you see those traffic markers on the road, these are these tiny small red pieces of glass which do not have any light of its own. When the vehicles come, because of the vibration, there's some energy generated, and then it starts beeping, and these are the markers. There's a divider. I have to carefully drive, isn't it? Similarly, these kind of markers we apply on Brahman to make sense of what it is, to understand Srishti. But per se, there is nothing. So he's saying, this particular Brahman that he's saying, Yad Brahma te tad viduhu. These my bhaktas who do meditation on me, they know what is that Brahma. Now tell me, what is that Brahma? They know you are saying, by meditating on you are Lord Krishna, and you are this son of Devaki, later on of Yasoda, son of Vasudeva, later on the Nanda king, and you are my cousin. So what am I going to believe? What is that Brahma? You in front of me, Dev. What is that Brahma? You in front of me, the Lord of this universe, Ishvara, or you are talking about Param Brahma without name and form. What are you talking about? Which Brahman? Brahma means what? Brahma can be Sopadhika and Nirupadhika. Sopadhika means with a name and a form. Nirupadhika means without name and a form. So Ganesh, Durga, Parvati, these are all Sopadhika Brahmans. Not a problem. This is the tinted glass. Tint applied on the transparent glass. So he said, King Tad Brahma. Then how is it elaborated? That Brahma kim sopadhikam nirupadhikam va. Is it with certain description, name and form, or without it? Because if it is nirupadhika Brahma, then it is jnaya. You cannot meditate on it. You have to just analyze it, because you cannot see it. It's only logically you will analyze. Can you see electricity? You'll see an electric bulb, or you see the computer screen, then you analyze and presume that there is electricity in it. You will get a shock. But can you see electricity? No, you cannot see it. Can you see it? No, you can't. But if there is an electric bulb, it gives you light. You say, yes, there is electricity that's giving me light, but you can never see electricity. Similarly, when you see the bulb, that's like a sopadhika rupa of that energy which is hiding in it. Similar, not dheya. Dheya is something which has some name and form so that you can focus your attention. It could be Ganesha Rupa, it could be Durga Rupa, it could be Omkara, it could be Shiva Rupa, Vishnu Rupa, Sopadhika. Nirupadhika, Jnana, Tattvamasya, Aham Brahmasmi, Chaitanya Swarupa, Ayamatma Brahma, Prajnanam Brahma. These are the Vedic sentences. You have to meditate on them and slowly abandon all thoughts. And then Upasana and Karma, all that you have done now, after reading the sentences, you purify your consciousness, and slowly you realize, my thoughts are not the truth. These are my thoughts. Truth is something else. And what is that truth? That truth permeates all these thoughts. Without that truth, the thoughts are not possible. So what is that truth? That truth is infinite, ever-expanding presence. Satta Swarupa. When the presence is there, everyone else can be present. If there is no presence, we cannot be present. Something like this. Okay, so he's saying sopadikam nirupadikam va evam atmanam deham adhikritya tasmin adhisthane tishtati iti adhyatmam. Now adhyatma, what is adhyatma? Is just making sense of it. Anvaya evam atmanam deham adhikritya. So what is adhi atma? Atma means that body. Atma can, I have told you, atma word is used to refer to sometimes mind, sometimes the body, sometimes our antakarana, and sometimes atma can refer to the sopadhika brahma, sometimes it will be finally the nirupadhika brahma. Atma word has been used everywhere. Okay, now sopadhika, there are again different levels. So because you have the annamaya kosha, the pranamaya kosha, manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, anandamaya kosha, and every level, what is there? Atma only. The Atma with certain definitions. And that is a sopathika level. So then what are we talking about here? He's asking. Now Adhyatma means whatever this body are you talking about, or what is inside this body? What are you talking about? If you're talking about this body, this is parichina, it is limited. If you're talking about the consciousness which permits this body, then that is unlimited. It is in all bodies. So what is that adhyatma? Atmanam adhikritya tasmin adhisthane tishtati. Very simple in Hindi, if I would say, adhikritya, which sort of takes possession of this physical body, and then in that platform it makes use of that platform to exist there. That is adhyatma. That is how he's elaborating it. Adhisthane tishtati adhyatma. Now he's saying that adhyatma, because we know adhyatma is all about self. Adhyatmika dukha means what? The physical, emotional, whatever pain concerned with the body. Now this pain that you are experiencing, is it about your physical body, the pain, or you're talking about the psychological? What is that adhyatmika? Adhyatmika chinta, what is it about? He's asking that question. Sotradi karana gramo. The here, the indriya, 5 indriyas you have, like sotra, the adi means what? Ears, nose, that's sparsendriya, and then the Sravana indriya, Darsana indriya, right? And then Rasana indriya, all these indriyas you have. Are you referring to that? Grihana indriya, are you referring to that? Or are you referring to, or you are referring to what? Pratyak Chaitanyam va, that presence of the Satta Swarupa Chaitanya, which pervades all of us. Because when he mentions that, Mula Prakriti had mentioned about it, that like monies, jewels are held together by a thread in a garland, this Chaitanya is Sarva Vyapaka, it's everywhere. We had mentioned that in chapter 7. So he's saying, are you talking about Pratyak Chaitanya? Pratyak means what? Intimate. Parag means which is distant. Pratyak is which is intimate. Pratyak Chaitanya, intimately, the consciousness resides in the body. Are you talking about that consciousness? If you're talking about that consciousness, then it cannot be limited to this body. It's a Vibhu Padartha, it will be everywhere. If you're talking about this Karanagrama, this whole samasti of these senses, then it is a mind-body complex. What do you mean by Adhyatma? So second question, please understand. First question, Brahma is Sopadhika or Nirupadhika. And the second question, Adhyatma, is this body, mind complex, or are you talking about the consciousness which resides in this mind-body complex? Okay? This is very simple. Tatha karma cha akhilam ityatra kim karma yajna rupam anyadava. Then you're saying karma cha akhilam, har karma ko jaan jata, karma rahasya ko samajh jata. Kaun sa karma hai? Because there are certain Vedantic sentences and we will make sense of it here. So what is saying that, are you talking about yajna rupam anyadava? Are you talking about yajna, the sacrifices? Because we have studied about Pancha Yajna in chapter 4, haven't we? We have dealt with it, all these yajnas. So are you talking about these yajnas, the sacrifices? Everything is a yajna, even pranayama is a yajna, meditation is a yajna, indriya nigraha is a yajna. That you have already taught us. So what do you mean by that? Are you talking about that particular yajna, which is a ritual sacrifice, or you're talking about yoga and everything can be included as karma? Tanute karmani tanute picha iti sruto daividhya chavanat. Vijnanam, so Pratyak Chaitanya, and why he's asking this, Anyadava? Because in Taittiriya Upanishad, the 241, remember, you can note it down, 241 Taittiriya Upanishad, there is a sentence, Vijnanam Yagyam Tanute Karmani Tanute Picha. So these yajnas which are being done, they're saying the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the analytical self in us, sort of does these sacrifices because the physical work is just outside. What is actually happening that I am sacrificing this for Indra, I'm doing this, these kinds of sacrifices. Like you are doing any karma and you are doing the samarpam, whatever, it is happening at the mind of, at the level of the mind, and therefore that buddhi is the real karta. This whole activity is less important. Now this yajna kind of appears as if it's a mental act. Is it that subjective aspect of sacrifice? Because there are two aspects. One is the whole karma. The other one is the subjective aspect of a certain physical activity, which is a ritual sacrifice. कौन सी यज्ञ की बात कर रहे हैं, भावना का या जो पूरा कर्म है, जो दिखता है, जो रिचुअलिस्टिक है और किताब के अनुसार करना पड़ता है? Are you talking about either of these two? So he mentions that. तब मम च समत्वात् कथम त्वं मां पृच्छसि इति शंखम अपनुदन् सर्व पुरुष पुरुषेभ्य उत्तमस्य सर्वज्ञस्य तव न किंचित् अज्ञो किंचित् अज्ञेयम् इति संबोधनेन सूचयति हे पुरुषोत्तमो इति. So now Madhusudana Saraswati is elaborating on that last line as to why he's addressing Krishna as Purushottama. Krishna might just, he's kind of reply to Arjuna, I'm a cousin, I'm just maybe a year older than you or a same age. And then the Shruti is also very confusing. Shruti sometimes talking about karma as yajna or sacrifice. And other places, karma word is used to sort of talk about certain buddhi kriya, certain subjective processes. Then it is very confusing. How can I answer? Why are you asking this question? Like for example, if you are two colleagues sitting in an office and your boss was supposed to hold a meeting at 3 o'clock. And then he received a phone call from his wife. And then he sort of says, I'm coming in a moment. Then he vanishes from the office. So then your colleague, which is super excited about these things, he sort of looks at you and says, do you think they had a fight? His wife shouted at him. Why did he go home? What do you say? How do I know? Why the hell you ask these questions to me? Don't you do that? Arjuna can do, Krishna can do this to Arjuna. Arjuna is asking what is yajna, what is karma, what is adhyatma, and what is Brahma. What Bhagavan can say, how do I know? I'm standing in front of you. In case, because he's a cousin, he might play that game with him. Arjuna is kind of removing that kind of a possibility by saying you are Purushottama, which means I don't consider you as a human being. What is the lesson for us by reading all this? So far, you see Lord Krishna as an avatar, as Mathura Nandana, then you have some limited love from him. But if you see him as Parameshwara, you have another advantage because you are recognizing his Vishwanyamaka Sakati, that he controls the whole universe. Then if he knows you know that secret, you'll get some benefit from him, isn't it? You'll know this boy knows that he's a rich man, and if the rich man knows that you know that he's very rich, he cannot lie to you. You say, sir, give me a donation of 50,000 for this spiritual work. He will not refuse because he knows how much money he has, It's like this. Arjuna, with a lot of love and regards, addresses Krishna as Purushottama, saying, you are Sarvagya. Don't bluff, tell me the truth. Okay? So it's the beautiful dialogue between Bhakta and Bhagavan, where the Bhakta also playing the game of love to tease Bhagavan, to extract the best of benefits in terms of jnana. Here there is no money, no benefits. It's only an exchange of words. What are the purpose? To know Atma, to have Atma jnana. Right? Sucheti Purushottama iti adhibhutam cha kim proktam, and what is that adhibhuta? Prithivyaati bhutam adhikritya jat kinchit karya adhibhuta padena vivakshitam kimba samastam eva karyajatam. Now, what is adhibhuta? What is bhuta? Bhuta is bhuta bhava, whatever you see, all the physical objects, isn't it? Now, in these physical objects, are you talking about all these physical things? Prithvivyadi bhutam adhikritya. That pancha bhuta, what is that? Prithvi, apa, vayu, agni. Prithvi, apa, teja, vayu, akasa. These are the 5 things. Now, are you talking about whatever can exist adhibhuta through these panchabhutas? Are you talking about this? Or you're talking about whatever sort of expresses, whatever is the nature which manifests in whatever is karya jata. And what is karana jata? The mula prakriti. 7th chapter you have to remember. 8th chapter you cannot understand if you do not remember what we have studied in 7th chapter. Because now all these chapters will be interrelated till we have reached that chapter 17. After that, then it becomes a little easy. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. They're relatively easy. There are no big philosophical concepts over there. So, but these 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12, these are kind of important chapters where there's some theoretical concepts and they're all interrelated. So he's saying that Prithvivyadi bhutam adhikritya jatkinchit karyam adhibhuta padena vibhakitam. Whatever is karya rupa in any of these. So it could be Prithvi or Apa or Vayu or Agni or Akasa, any of these. Are you talking about that? Or Samastam eva karyatam, whatever is karya rupa. It's not specifically any particular material object or any bhuta padartha, but whatever is available as karya. What is karya? Whatever is a vikara of the karana. What is that karana? Prakriti. And what is prakriti? This is a mayika aspect of Bhagavan. Because this karya rupa that we see as real is fundamentally appearing like real. That is Vedanta. Sankhya, genuine. It is all real. But Vedanta, no, it appears like real. It is neither Satya nor Mithya. Vyavaharika Satya. Paramarthika Satya, no. Ultimately not true. But it's not completely stupid also. It's not like Sasavishana, the horns of a rabbit. It's not that stupid. Okay, it's not that stupid. Like, for example, what happened to you? I saw 20 beautiful girls dancing where? In a rat hole. Oh, really? And what is that? That is in the ear of a tiger. And where is the tiger? In a picture book. If someone talks like this. I saw a tiger in a picture book for children in whose ear there was a rat hole, and in that rat hole there was a beautiful dance stage in which 20 girls were dancing. The sentences are grammatically correct. Does it make any sense to you? No. This whole sansara is not like that. There is some logic. It appears real. So it's called Vyavaharika Satya. It is not tuchha. It is not superfluous. It has some substance. It has some logic of its own. Is it Paramarthika Satya? Chirantana Satya? No. Chirantana Satya is what? Which underlies all of this. And what is that which underlies all of it? What underlies all of it is that Brahman, that Atma. That is what we will talk about. So, adhibhutam cha kim proktam prithibhyati bhutam adhikritya jat kinchit karyam adhibhuta padena vivakshitam kimba samastam eva karya jatam. Whatever is karya rupa, whatever is that vikara sabda. Chakara sarvesang prasnanam samuchayartha. Avibhutam cha kim proktam, that cha kind of combines all of them into make a samuchaya. Adhidaivam kim uchyate. That is the last question in the first verse. What is that adhidaiva? Devata Visam Anudhyanamba. Is it Adhideva? Are you talking about gods and goddesses? Are talking about the divine principles? No. Sarva Devatasu Aditya Mandal Adishu Anushutam Chaitanyamba. Are you talking about a particular Devata or anything? Adhideva relating to any particular Devata, that Vishavastu, or that Satta Chaitanya Surupa, which starting with all the gods and goddesses till the Aditya Mandale. What is Anishuta, which holds together, which is Sarva Vyapaka, which is all pervading Chaitanya? What is that Adhideva you are talking about? So what is one? What is Adhidaiva, and what is Adhi, and what is Adhidaiva? Adhibhuta and Adhidaiva. Is it Adhibhuta? Are you referring to whatever is materially available? What is Karya Jata? Whatever is born out of Vikara. Are you referring to that? Similarly, by Adhidaiva, are you referring to any particular gods and goddesses, about them, or whatever that Chaitanya Shrupa, which starting with all the gods and goddesses, but even go higher, Aditya Mandaladishu, Anishrutam, sort of stitched together, that thread, that Chaitanya, all pervading. Are you talking about that? So this is the summary of the first sloka. The second sloka is not so difficult. We have dealt with it, and there's a little, and I just read it out, easier to understand. Adhijagyo yajna Adhigato devatatma va param brahma va. Adhijagya is what? Adhi sabda means whatever is there, like there is a jagya. So you're saying Indraya Swaha, you are doing it. Somaya Swaha, Surjaya Swaha, you are doing some jagya. Is it Navagraha? So some devatas. By Adhijagya, are you referring to the devata who is Aradhya for that particular ritual? Or are you referring to Param Brahma? Param Brahma means what? Without name and form. He subsumes all these gods and goddesses. Is the ultimate being. Are you referring to him, or you are referring to specific demigods? Such a katham kena prakarana chintaniyaha. And then how to meditate on that particular ultimate being who is Adhijagya. If you're talking about a particular person, a particular demigod, a particular divinity with a name and a form, like Prajapati, Indra, Mitra, Varuna, I can think and meditate on him. You're saying Param Brahma, then I get a little confused. That's what he's saying. King Tadatmena Kimba Atyanta Abhedena. Now remember this word, it will keep coming in Vedanta. Please note this down, and you can also read. What is Tadatmya? Tad Atma. Jasya Saha Tadatma Tasya Bhava Tadatmya. Tadatmya means what essentially? You know, one good example is that a person loses his wife, a person loses his son. Then what does he say? I lost my soul. Oh, wait, you are alive. How did you lose your soul? He says, my wife, she was my jaan, she was my life. Oh, really? Very good thing. But you are alive. You are not dead. Meri jaan chali gayi, but how did it go? This is Tadatmya. You have so much of identification. So Tadatmya is what? Veda Sahishnu Aveda. Remember this word. Veda Sahishnu Aveda. There will be some Veda, but there is a Aveda. So you have a strong identification with something, and you say there is a Tadatmyena, you are meditating on it. Why is he mentioning? The Brahman is different from me, but I'm saying, oh Brahman, I love you. I know you're different from me, but then, I have also consciousness, but so I'm like you. So I'm meditating you as no different from you. That's one way to look at it. The other one is, I'm Suddha Satta. I'm meditating on Brahman, which is Suddha Satta. The body is an illusion. If I start analyzing myself, the body falls, the mind falls, the emotions go, everything goes. What remains? Suddha Chaitanya. Is it any different from the Brahman? No. Let me meditate on my own consciousness, and this process starts. Then Aham Brahmasmi is the end product. I am Brahma Eva. Not that you are king of the universe, not in that sense, because again the Veda comes. I am the king of the universe, the king, and you. The three materials kind of being brought together. No, that's not what is Aveda. Aveda means what? All the Veda, all the differences, all the distinctions kind of melt down. What is there? There is no I. There is only Suddha Satta Chaitanya, a pure light and luminosity when you go on meditating. So, do I meditate on that Brahman, Atyanta Abhedana, that I am no different from the Brahman, or should I do Tadatmena? Means yes, there is some difference, but I am meditating on it. Like the father loves the son as his own self, the husband loves the wife as his own self, that kind of thing. Okay, Tadatmena Abhedana. Sarvathapi sa Kim asmin dehe vartate tato vahirava. And this particular thing that Adhijagya, Madhusudan, I have to meditate on you. Now this particular Adhijagya, this particular meditation, that Brahman all the time exists in this body. in me. If I have to meditate on it, atyanta abhedena, that I am not different from it, does it stay in my body or it is outside? What is the question here? Please understand. Arjuna is still confused. If Brahman is kind of a small object which is inside the body or outside the body, it is his ignorance, isn't it? He's slowly understanding. After so many chapters, he's still asking this question: is it inside my body or outside my body? And Bhagavan will explain that. Dehe chet sa ko atra. If it is inside my body, what is that Brahma? How do I meditate on it? Buddhyadihi tad vetirokava. Oh, you're talking about my buddhi. Do I meditate on my vijnanamaya kosha? My buddhi, is that Brahman? My emotions, my intellect? What do you mean by that? What is that Atma? What is that Brahman? Adhiyajna katham koatra si na prasnadvayam. Then now, koatra iti na prasnadvayam. Now, adhijajna and kaha adhijajna katham dehasmin madhusudan. How do I meditate? These are not two questions. Kintu saprakara eka eva prasna iti drashtavyam. What is saprakara? That first question is, ये अधियज्ञ कौन है और कैसे उसका मैं ध्यान करूं? मेरे से अलग नहीं है या थोड़ा अलग है, लेकिन मैं एक सोच के ध्यान करूं, सवाल ये। और वो अधियज्ञ मेरे शरीर में है या बाहर है? शरीर में है, क्या वो बुद्धि है, मेरे मन है, क्या है वो? That is the question, and therefore it's only one question. परम कारुणिकत्वाद अयासनेपि सर्व उपद्रव निवारकस्य भगवता अनायसेन भगवतः अनायसेन मत्संदेह उपद्रव निवारणम ईसत् करम उचितम एव इति सूचयन् संबोधयति हे मधुसूदन. You see, just imagine, I'll tell you one experience I had as a child to explain this particular thing. He's saying that whatever the mental disturbances we have, which are very difficult to remove, and then Bhagavan comes, he removes it in 1 second. Anayasena, without any work. Why? He's Sarvagya and he's Sarvanyanta. It's like when I was a child, I was struggling with a certain mathematical problem. I remember this. The same mathematical problem, I suddenly opened the book after about 2 years. Same thing, and one other student asked me at school, he said, Bhaiya, isko karo. And I took only 1 second. Why? I had graduated at Spencer time, and that mathematics was very easy for me, but I hadn't seen it but I had struggled with it in that particular class. After 1 year, it's so easy. Now, what he is saying is, what appears as a very difficult thing to overcome at one point of time in life becomes very easy. You know what is the takeaway here? When you keep growing, what you find very difficult to deal with today will become easier tomorrow, spiritually speaking. And the greater secret, if you connect with God, what appears impossible will become possible. Whatever you think is impossible, insurmountable, when you connect with God, that becomes surmountable, becomes achievable, becomes easy to reach. So there is where we stay here, and we will deal with the next sloka, which is a critical thing. Tomorrow we have kind of exceeded our time limit, but then we have finished 2 slokas. If you have any question, you can ask. I'll anyway switch off the YouTube. Yeah.
Okay, what would be the exact meaning of satta? Is it like dependent reality?
The satta swarupa cannot be dependent. Everything. Everything is dependent.
Everything satta is that.
Everything is dependent on that satta swarupa, the easiness. Everything is kind of dependent on that presence, and when that presence is there, everything else can appear. That is the substratum, Suddha Satta Swarupa. That is what. But then, in Laukika Vyavahara, depending on what you have in your mind, you can refer to that, like for example in Nyaya. Okay, so let's look at this Dravya, Guna, Karma. Dravya is what? A physical object. Any particular, there are 9 kinds of dravyas. And there is Guna, and there are 24 gunas, qualities. And there is Karma. Karma is physical activity. Now, what is common to all 3 in Nyaya? Satta. Satta is what? Presence. Bhavarupa. So, without this Satta, these 24 gunas, 9 dravyas, And Utthana, Patana, Prasarana, the karma, they will not have any meaning. So Satta is common to all of this. In Vedanta, the Satta, Suddha Satta Swarupa is Brahman, the eternal presence, all-pervading presence. It is Nirapeksha. Now, if it becomes Sapeksha, then it will lose its meaning. Then you have to find out what is the substratum of that particular Satta, which we call Sapeksha or dependent. So if something is dependent, you have to find out on what it resides, on what it rests, on what it depends. So we'll take it up tomorrow. Okay?
Exact meaning of the word from this satta. As in, I mean, they say that an object can't exist independently without the substratum.
Yeah, satta is isness. Satta, isness. In English, the simplest way. So if you say there is a pot, so what is, there is a pot, there is a pen, there is an elephant. What is common to all three of them? The isness. In that sense, they're saying. Okay, we'll go further, but that particular verse we had a long discussion. You can again look at it. Na bhava vidyate sataha, na sato vidyate bhavaha. In the Shankara Bhashya, it explains that vyavichara is what? Any particular karya rupa is vyavichara. Avyavichara is what? That particular satta swarupa. There's a long discussion there. We'll take it up tomorrow.